My son told me he never loved me because I spent most of my time caring for his sister with Down syndrome. Now my wife blames me and my daughter feels guilty. To preface, I'm a 44-year-old dad, been married to my wife for almost 18 years. We have 2 children, our son Andy, who's 16, and our daughter Danica, who's 13. Danica has Down syndrome. I debated for a while before posting this because I don't like airing family issues online, but I've hit a point where I need perspective, ideally from other parents who've navigated this kind of emotional minefield. 2 nights ago, Andy said something to me that I'm still trying to process. He looked me dead in the eye, calm, no anger in his voice, and said, "I never loved you. You weren't really there. You only cared about Danica." No screaming or slamming doors. Just a flat, matter-of-fact tone that hit harder than any teenage rebellion ever could. It was like he'd rehearsed it, or maybe he didn't need to. Maybe it's just something he's known deep down for a while. And now, my wife is blaming me. Danica is asking what she did wrong, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out if I actually did fail as a father, or if this is just what parenting sometimes becomes, a slow-motion train wreck that you don't realize is happening until you're already knee-deep in the wreckage. Let me give you the background. When Danica was born, we already knew she had Down syndrome. We found out at the 20-week scan. It wasn't a shock, but it hit me hard. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I had this picture in my head of what fatherhood would look like. Coaching Little League, father-son camping trips, watching Andy grow into his own person while I stood by to guide him. I didn't know where I'd fit into a world of IEP meetings, physical therapy, and speech-language pathologists. But once Danica arrived, all that hesitation disappeared. She was fragile, tiny, and needed us in ways Andy never had. I didn't choose to become obsessive, it just happened. I went into overdrive, learning baby sign language, diving into therapy schedules, advocating at her school, attending every doctor's appointment I could. It became my second job. Meanwhile, Andy was 3 when she was born, still figuring out how to tie his shoes, and suddenly he had a sister who required almost all of our energy. I thought he'd adjust. I thought he'd forget the chaos of those first years. I thought we'd balance it out over time. But balance never really happened. And if I'm being honest, that's on me. I didn't abandon Andy. I was there, just not as present. I missed some of his school events. I was slow to notice when he started becoming more withdrawn. I justified it all in my head. He's independent. He's doing fine. But now I wonder how much of that independence was really just emotional distance forming right under my nose. My wife stayed home for the first couple years after Danica's birth. We didn't have much family support. Her parents are across the country, mine are gone, and we couldn't afford a nanny. Everything was on us. I worked long hours, came home, and buried myself in managing things. It was easier to have tunnel vision, safer even. And over time, I turned into a logistics manager more than a dad. Andy, to his credit, was never a problem kid. No outbursts, no serious trouble. He got good grades, had a couple close friends, and mostly kept to himself. I took that as a sign that things were working, that I hadn't messed up as badly as I feared. I didn't realize silence doesn't always mean peace, it can also mean resignation. Then last month, Andy had what the school called a minor panic episode during an oral presentation. He started seeing a counselor there. We were told it was probably normal anxiety, nothing major, but something shifted after that. He came home quieter than usual, but sharper, like he was processing something big. The headphones stayed on at the table. The responses got shorter. Then came the comment. There was no even build-up or anything. I just tried to start a conversation with him, and it ended with him flat out telling me he never loved me, and that I chose his sister over him. Now I'm in free fall. My wife, who I'll admit has shouldered more than her share of blame over the years, laid it all out last night. She said she's been trying to parent both kids while I focused on one, that I micromanaged Danica's care to the point where she doesn't even feel like their mom anymore, that she offered to take over some of Danica's scheduling and I shut her out, that I chose Danica. She didn't say it with venom, just quiet resentment that's probably been simmering for years. And I didn't argue. Not because I'm a pushover, I've stood my ground plenty in this marriage, but because she was right. What cut me the deepest, though, was what happened with Danica later that night. She came into our room while we were cleaning up from dinner and asked me if Andy was mad at her. I asked why, and she said, "Because I take up all your time. I can stop needing stuff. I'll try hard not to mess up so much." That broke something in me. This isn't about playing favorites. I don't love Danica more, but I've certainly given her more of me, more attention, more time, more energy, and not because I value her more, but because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. And somewhere in that imbalance, I failed to see what was happening with Andy. I assumed he was fine because he acted fine. Now I'm being told by him, by my wife, by the facts that he wasn't. I'm not the type of dad who avoids accountability. I don't coddle. I don't ignore my faults. But this one stings in a way I can't shake, because I tried. I really tried. I just didn't try the right way, for the right reasons. And now, I've got a son who can barely look at me, a wife who's more of a co-manager than a partner, and a daughter internalizing all of it like it's somehow her fault. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing it because I don't know how to make this right. I'm not looking for an overnight fix. I know rebuilding trust takes time, but I don't want to sit here and do nothing either. So to any parents out there who've had to split their time unevenly for one reason or another, medical needs, behavioral issues, divorce, whatever, how do you begin repairing the damage to the other kid? How do you reach someone who's already convinced themselves you're not worth the effort? Because right now, I don't know if Andy hates me or if he's already past the point of caring at all. Update 1, thanks to everyone who commented on my last post. I've read through every reply, some of them more than once. A few were gut-wrenching, but I needed that. I didn't post looking for sympathy, I wanted clarity, and I got some. A lot has happened in the past week. Let's start with Andy. He asked to go stay with his cousins on my wife's side, his aunt, my wife's sister, for a while. I didn't fight it. I didn't try to beg or guilt him. I asked if he was sure, and he said yes. So I packed a small bag and I drove him. It was a 2-hour drive, mostly silent. He had his headphones in, but I noticed they weren't even playing anything. He was pretending not to hear me, just so he wouldn't have to talk. When we pulled up to the house, I sat there for a second before I said, "Do you really mean it, that you never loved me?" He stared at the dashboard for a moment. Then he said, "I don't know. I just don't feel anything when you're around." That sentence stayed with me long after I watched him disappear into the house without looking back. That's what makes this all worse. If he had yelled, if he had said he hated me, I'd at least know there was something burning there, some emotion to work with. But this blankness? That scares me. It feels like I already lost him and didn't even notice when it happened. When I got home, my wife and I had it out. Not a screaming match, just raw honesty. She's grieving too, in her own way. She said she's not just mad at me. She's mad at herself, mad at the world, mad at how unfair everything feels. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. I don't even know if we're in a marriage anymore. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say, I've been here, I've worked, I've cared, but I didn't, because I knew what she meant. We've been surviving, not living. She was right. I told her that I never meant to make her feel like she was alone in raising Andy, that I didn't plan to become a satellite orbiting Danica, but I also said something that I think surprised her. I didn't choose Danica over Andy. I just didn't know how to stop fixing things, and she always needed fixing. It wasn't an excuse. It was a confession. And in that moment, we both broke a little. Not in a dramatic movie scene way, just in the way tired people do when they realize they've been carrying something too heavy for too long. We talked for hours, about everything, about the time Andy won second place in the science fair and I didn't show because Danica had a specialist appointment, about the school trip he missed because I forgot to turn in the permission slip, about how he stopped asking me to go camping after I said maybe next time 4 times in a row. I had no idea he even kept track. Meanwhile, Danica is reacting to all of this in the only way she knows how. She's regressing. She threw a tantrum in the grocery store aisle when I said we couldn't buy another stuffed animal. Then she cried all the way home. She hasn't done that since she was 8. She's wetting the bed again. Her teacher called and said she's quieter in class, not raising her hand like she usually does. And every night she asks if Andy is coming back. 2 nights ago, I found her sitting outside his bedroom door with her drawing pad. She had drawn the 3 of us, me, her, and Andy. We were all holding hands. She looked up and said, "If I stop being hard, will Andy come back?" I didn't cry then. I waited until she went to bed. Then, I sat in his empty room and let it all hit me. I started journaling. At first, it was just to go over Danica's progress the way I've always done. But as I wrote, I realized I was cataloging the only place in my life where I've ever felt like I was doing it right. With Danica, I knew how to help. There were measurable goals, clear victories. I could see the progress. She learned a new sign, or made a friend, or got through a dentist appointment without tears, and I could tell myself, see, you're not failing. But with Andy, I was lost. I never knew what he needed because he never asked, and I didn't push. I figured no news was good news. I mistook quiet for peace, and now I see that was cowardice. I finally booked a therapist for myself. First session was 2 days ago. The first thing she said was, "You're grieving a living person. That's one of the hardest things to do." She's right. I'm grieving Andy not because he's gone, but because I don't know who he is anymore. Or maybe I never really did. Maybe I was too scared to admit that I didn't know how to be his father. But that doesn't mean I'm giving up. I told my wife I want to rebuild this, not as a quick fix, not as a guilt trip, but slow, real, something Andy can trust again if he chooses to. So here's the plan: 1 message a week. That's it. No long texts, no "please come home" paragraphs. Just 1 message that reminds him he exists in our lives, even if he's not physically here. The first one I sent yesterday. Danica waved at a random car today because she thought it was you. She was embarrassed, but she still smiled after. He left it on red, and that's okay. Because I'm not doing this for a quick win. I'm doing it because I refuse to let my son fade into a memory without fighting for something better. I can't undo the past, but I can show him, starting now, that I see him, that he matters. Even if it's 1 silent message at a time. Update 2: Andy came home for 1 night. I wasn't expecting it. My birthday was coming up and I didn't even bring it up. Didn't want to make things weird or guilt anyone into fake gestures. I've never been big on celebrating it anyway, not since Danica was born, and every spare dollar and minute seemed better spent elsewhere. But on the day itself, around 5 p.m., my wife's sister pulled up in the driveway. Andy stepped out and followed her inside without saying anything. He handed me a birthday card. No note, just a plain store-bought card with "Happy Birthday" in generic gold lettering. But it was something. We had dinner together. Spaghetti and garlic bread, his favorite, though he barely touched it. Danica tried to hug him right when he came in, and he flinched, just enough that I noticed. Then he gave her a quick side hug and said, "Hey." That was it. She looked unsure but smiled anyway. At the table, the conversation was mostly between my wife and Danica. Andy stayed quiet, only giving 1-word answers. At one point, Danica asked if he wanted to play a board game after dinner, and he mumbled, "Maybe next time." When we sang "Happy Birthday," Andy actually joined in. His voice cracked a little at the end. Nerves or emotion, I'm not sure, but he sang. That was the most human moment of the night. After we ate, I asked if he'd sit with me for a few minutes. We ended up in the garage, his choice, not mine. I think he didn't want Danica to overhear anything, and maybe he didn't want to make it feel like a talk in the living room. I asked him, "Did your aunt make you come?" He shook his head. I just wanted to see how things were. Just to check. Like a stranger circling back to a house they used to live in. I asked him what he meant. He didn't elaborate, just shrugged and said, "Wanted to see if anything changed." I told him we were trying. That I was trying, that I knew I messed up and I wasn't going to pretend I didn't. But I also said something new, something I hadn't said before because I was too focused on guilt. I told him, "I'm still your dad. I'm not giving up on you, but I'm not chasing you down either. If you want distance, I'll respect that. But I'm not going to tiptoe around you like I've done something unforgivable forever. I love you. That doesn't change." He didn't respond to that either. Just stared at the cement floor like it might give him a different answer than I could. Then he asked, "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" I said no, not unless something major changes. I told him we're in therapy, we're trying, but no, we're not separating. I wanted to ask what he meant by that, whether he saw our problems all along, or if he just never saw us as a couple, but I didn't. Instead, I told him the truth, probably the first time I've spoken plainly with him in years. "We both made mistakes," I said. "Me more than anyone. But I'm not quitting on this family." He nodded, said he needed to go, and left with his aunt. I didn't try to stop him. I didn't ask when he'd be back. When I came inside, Danica was crying in her room. She'd been trying to draw a birthday card for me, but crumpled it up after Andy left. I asked her why. She said, "It was supposed to be from both of us." She's still convinced this is her fault, that something she did or said pushed Andy away. We've told her 100 times that's not true, but I don't think she fully believes us. Maybe because we haven't believed ourselves until now. My wife brought up the idea of family therapy again, not just for the kids, but for us. The marriage, the roles we've both been stuck in for years. But she had one condition, and she didn't sugarcoat it. You need to let me parent Danica, really parent, not just manage me like one of her therapists. She wasn't wrong, but it stung. I've been so afraid of slipping, of Danica missing something important, that I've basically turned my wife into a background player. Even when she offered to handle things, I second-guessed her. I kept thinking, she doesn't know the routine, or I'll just do it faster. But she's right, I've been micromanaging, and in doing that, I've pushed everyone away, Andy, her, even Danica in some ways. So we scheduled the first session, just the two of us for now. Then, if Andy is willing, we'll add him. If not, we'll keep showing up anyway. I also decided to stop waiting for Andy to make the next move. I'm done being passive. Every week, I've been sending him a message short, no pressure, no guilt trips, just a snapshot of home. The last one said, Danica made pancakes this morning, said they were Andy style because she burned them a little. Thought you'd get a laugh. He left it on read, no reply. But I'm hoping we can fix this soon. I still and will always love my son. Update 3. A lot has happened since I last posted, and while nothing is magically resolved, I think the shape of something new, maybe better, is starting to form. We've been in therapy for a month now. My wife and I go weekly. Andy has joined 2 sessions. They were rough, honest in a way that made my stomach turn, but necessary. The first session he attended, he barely looked at me. He kept his hoodie up, arms folded, staring at the floor like he was counting down the minutes. I didn't push him. I didn't try to defend myself. I just listened. That was hard. But the second session he talked, and what he said stayed with me, probably forever. Andy said he didn't just resent me because I gave Danica more attention. He said he resented the invisible pressure we put on him, that he always had to be okay because his sister wasn't. That we never gave him room to be upset, frustrated, or even just selfish like normal kids get to be. Because every time he cried, we told him Danica didn't mean it. Every time he wanted to do something alone, we told him she'd feel left out. Every time he got frustrated with her for interrupting, for making noise, for just being around, we asked him to understand, be patient, be mature. He was 6, then 8, then 10, and we kept expecting him to be a grown-up in a kid's body because we were too tired or too focused on Danica to give him the emotional space he needed. He told me something that shattered me in a new way. He said the only time he ever felt really noticed by me was when he got the flu in 5th grade and had a high fever. I stayed home from work for 2 days and just sat by his bed, brought him soup, watched cartoons with him. He said he remembers thinking, I wish I could stay sick forever. At least then you'd stay. I couldn't even respond to that. The therapist stepped in because I was just staring at the floor, trying not to break down in front of my son. But that moment changed something in me. Not in the vague inspirational sense, but in the way you realize something irreversible happened, and now you either take responsibility or spend the rest of your life hiding from it. So, I made a decision. A small one, but a clear one. I wasn't going to ask Andy for forgiveness. Not yet, because it's not about me being forgiven. It's about him being seen. I told him we'd try something new one day every month that was just his. No Danica, no chores, no distractions. Just a full day where he picked what we did and I followed his lead. He hesitated at first. I could see the suspicion in his face, like he was waiting for a catch. But he agreed. The first Andy day was quiet. He picked a hike in the canyon trails near Folsom, and I thought he might bail at the last minute. But he didn't. We walked for hours, barely talked, just took in the trees, the breeze, the stillness. We got burgers afterward. He didn't open up much, but he smiled once when we saw a dog wearing sunglasses on the trail. A small thing, but it was the first unguarded smile I'd seen from him in years. The second Andy day was a movie marathon. He made a list, 3 horror movies, all sequels I'd never heard of. We got junk food, ordered pizza, and he gave me a full commentary on every plot hole and ridiculous death scene. I wasn't just tolerating his interests, I was enjoying being invited into them. I could tell he noticed. He's still reserved, still doesn't initiate conversations with me, but he lets me exist next to him now without tensing up. That's progress. Danica, for her part, is improving too. Therapy has helped her express her emotions in better ways. She still asks about Andy constantly, but she's less anxious. She's been drawing again, mostly pictures of the three of us together. The latest one had us holding balloons. Mine was blue. Andy's was red. Hers was pink with stars. She told me it meant we were on the same sky again. I don't know where she got that phrase, but it gutted me. My wife and I are doing the work too. Our couples sessions have been more brutal than I expected. We're not yelling, not anymore, but we're unspooling years of resentment and missed signals. She told me, bluntly, that she felt invisible during those early years with Danica, like I didn't think she was capable of handling the hard stuff, that I only trusted me to manage Danica's needs. And she's right. I controlled everything because I needed to feel competent somewhere. I told her I felt like a failure in every other area, my job, our marriage, even with Andy. But with Danica, I could track progress. I could measure success. It made me feel like I was doing something right. But in clinging to that, I shut her out. We're not pretending anymore. There's no forced intimacy, no fake smiles. But we're being real. And weirdly, that's bringing us closer than we've been in years. We're also rebalancing parenting duties. I've started backing off on purpose, letting my wife handle Danica's routines more often, trusting her judgment, even if it means things aren't done my way. That's been hard, but she stepped up, and Danica's responded better than I thought. She told her mom the other day, "I like when you do it your way." I needed to hear that. Another change, we've set a family policy: no talking about Andy without including him. No whispering, no side conversations. If something concerns him, he gets to be part of it. He deserves that dignity. Next week is the third Andy day. He wants to try go-karts. Said he used to want to when he was little, but figured you'd be too busy. That stung, but I kept my face still and just said, "Let's do it." This path isn't clean, it's not linear. Andy still sleeps with his door locked. Danica still cries when he leaves for school without saying goodbye. My wife and I still default to silence when we're tired, but we're walking it now, together. And for the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm losing my family. I feel like I'm learning how to earn them back. Final update. This will probably be my last update, though I've learned to never say never when it comes to parenting. Andy moved back in. It didn't happen in some dramatic moment. No big sit down, no grand apology, just a quiet midweek return. He came home with a duffel bag, dropped it by the front door, and asked what was for dinner. My wife and I looked at each other and we just nodded. No questions, no fanfare. He's back under our roof, but the emotional distance is still there. I'm okay with that. You can't force a bridge to rebuild itself overnight, especially when you were the one who let it decay in the first place. But it's a start. He's home. He's safe, and we have time. What I didn't do and what I refused to do was grovel. Not because I'm proud. God knows I've had enough therapy to see how I failed him, but because I don't want him to think love from a parent comes with groveling or guilt as currency. It comes with showing up over and over, even when it's uncomfortable. We talked, not deeply, not often, but it's no longer ice-cold silence. One night a couple weeks ago, I walked past his room and heard Danica laughing. I stopped. The door was half closed, and I saw him helping her set up her math app on the tablet. He wasn't faking it. He was patient, explaining slowly, letting her tap the screen while he nodded along. That laugh, it wasn't just hers. It was his too. Something genuine. I didn't interrupt. Later that night, he came into the kitchen while I was finishing dishes. He poured himself a glass of water and leaned on the counter. "She's a lot smarter than people think," he said. I nodded. "Yeah, she is." Then he left the room. No deep conversation, no hug, but it was enough. We've kept going to family therapy. My wife and I go every other week. Andy joins once a month. Danica's too young to be in those sessions, but the therapist gave us exercises to help her understand feelings in simple ways. Storybooks, drawing exercises, routine-based emotional mapping. She doesn't get the full picture, but she gets the colors. She understands something big happened and that we're all trying to fix it. My wife and I had to confront a lot between us too. We're not okay in the fairy tale sense. There are days we still drift, mornings where we barely speak, nights where we retreat to opposite sides of the couch, but we've stopped pretending the silence is normal. One major change? I stepped back from micromanaging Danica's life. That wasn't easy. Control had become a comfort. When you have a child with a disability, routines feel sacred. Schedules feel like armor. Letting someone else, even your partner, handle those things can feel like handing off a ticking clock. But I did it. My wife now handles Danica's speech therapy coordination, and she's the point of contact with the school aides. I still attend the IEP meetings, but I listen more. I don't interrupt. I don't correct her notes. I let her parent. She's better at it than I gave her credit for. And yes, I still have Andy days. Once a month, his pick. No Danica, no chores, no agenda, just his world. Last month, it was an escape room and Thai food. This month, it was a soccer match. He doesn't say much during those days, but I catch him glancing over more, laughing easier. He doesn't flinch when I pat his back. He doesn't shrink away when I ask how school's going. Sometimes he even answers with more than one word. That's progress. Danica turned 14 last weekend. We had a small party, just us, her teacher, and a neighbor she adores. Andy handed her a stuffed dolphin, blue and silver, with a little bow around its neck. He didn't just give it to her. He knelt down, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Happy birthday, Danny." That was the first time he'd used her name like that in over a year. She's been sleeping with that dolphin every night since, carries it around the house like it's priceless. I caught her whispering to it, "Andy gave you to me," like it made the toy magic. In therapy, our counselor said something that stuck with me. You're not fixing a moment, you're repairing a childhood. That hit hard, because she's right. What broke between me and Andy didn't happen in a single fight or oversight. It happened over years, quiet, consistent neglect that didn't look like abuse, but felt like erasure. And now, I don't get to fix it with one heartfelt letter or dramatic family dinner. I fix it the same way it broke, one day at a time. Same goes for my marriage. We've stopped pretending everything's fine. We have hard conversations now. We fight cleaner. We admit when we feel overlooked. And we're back to doing one thing a week together, just us. A walk, a show, grocery shopping without Danica. It's not romantic yet, but it's something. And here's the last thing I'll share. A few nights ago, Andy and I were cleaning up after dinner, just the two of us. Danica was upstairs. My wife was on a Zoom call. I handed him a towel to dry the dishes and said, "You doing okay?" He shrugged. "Some days?" Then he looked at me and added, "I don't hate you. Not anymore." I didn't say anything right away, just nodded. Then he smirked, barely, and said, "Still think your playlist sucks though." And I laughed, really laughed. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the beginning of something real. So no, there's no perfect ending here, no grand reunion or tearful apology that solves everything. Just four people in a house, trying harder than they ever did before, learning to listen, learning to share the space, learning, most of all, to love each other differently. And for now, that's enough.